If I had known that I would meet Max on the plane, I should have prayed before leaving. 6 years ago, just after graduating from college, I entered the workplace and quickly gained the favor of the company's CEO, Max Lee. Under the attack of the flames of love, I quickly fell for him. It was only after getting married that I realized I was just a stand-in. I served Max by making tea, doing chores, cooking, and learning various etiquette of the wealthy, thinking that this would earn his true affection. However, as soon as Sophia returned, he asked for a divorce. During my journey to study abroad with $1 million, I discovered that I was pregnant, and I had triplets, 2 boys and a girl. "Mom, who is that uncle? Why are you so angry?" my youngest baby, Alan, asked. I snapped back to reality, pinching his chubby cheeks and said, "Why are you calling him an uncle? That's clearly a dummy." Hearing this, Max couldn't take it anymore. He stood up and walked towards me with long strides. He was a high-ranking figure, and at this moment, he exuded a powerful aura and a fierce appearance. Sensing the danger, all 3 of my babies quickly stood in front of me, and in unison, they said, "You can't bully our mom." I had so much resentment towards Max that I had almost forgotten that he had a bad temper. Afraid that he might hurt my children, I quickly stood up to protect my 3 little ones, and with a brave face, I looked at Max. "If you dare to touch my children, I will tell Sophia that these 3 kids are yours." Sure enough, Sophia was Max's weak point. After staring at me for a while, Max pursed his lips and sat back down without saying a word. I finally breathed a sigh of relief. Max could be quite frightening when he got angry. In the past, I dared not utter a word whenever Max Lee was displeased. But now things were different. Not only did I dare to argue with him, but I also encouraged his children to call him a dummy if they ever saw him again. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, pointing towards Max Lee. My 3 little ones were always obedient. "Okay, Mom," they said. They were so well behaved, and I patted their little heads, feeling refreshed. "Mom, do you have a grudge against that dummy?" my eldest one asked. Although they were born around the same time, my eldest one, Lucas, as the older brother, seemed more mature and perceptive. "Yes, he cheated me back then, and I'm still stuck in his trap." Upon hearing this, Lucas stroked his chin and thought for a moment. "I see." When the plane was about to land, my second child, Alex, suddenly complained of a stomachache. Lucas suggested taking him to the restroom, and I agreed, concerned for Alex's well-being. However, by the time the announcement to disembark came over the intercom, neither Lucas nor Alex had returned. Worried, I decided to go look for them, taking Alan with me. As I approached the restroom, I heard a sudden cry not far from the plane's exit door. When I turned to look, I saw Max, with his imposing figure, losing his balance as he disembarked from the plane. Luckily, he reacted quickly and managed to steady himself. Otherwise, the headline news the next day might have read, "Max Lee, Fuji Group CEO, stumbles while exiting plane due to excessive revelry." I couldn't help but burst into laughter at the sight of Max doing a split on the gangway. I'm not sure if my laughter was too loud, but Max's icy gaze immediately turned in my direction. I was instantly silenced by fear. However, after he turned away, I couldn't help but wonder why I was afraid. I wasn't his subordinate, nor was I his wife anymore. Shaking my head, I found Lucas and Alex hiding behind the plane's exit door. I asked them, "What mischief were you up to?" It turns out Max didn't lose his balance at all. Instead, Lucas and Alex were hiding on either side of the exit door and yanked the jump rope they were holding tightly when Max walked by, causing him to stumble. Realizing that I had discovered their actions, the eldest and the second child pouted and lowered their heads. "Sorry, Mom, we were wrong," they said in a soft and pitiful tone. My heart melted, and I couldn't stay angry with them. I did, however, remind them, "Mom knows you wanted to seek revenge for me, but have you thought about what would happen if he fell and got seriously injured? We would have to pay a hefty sum." Alex attempted to offer an explanation, but a stern look from me silenced him. As I left the airport with my 3 little ones, I saw Max again. There was a stretched Lincoln waiting for him, and when the driver opened the car door, I could clearly see Sophia inside. After 5 years, she was still wearing her favorite white dress, and she had a small white flower in her hair. If you didn't know any better, you might think Max had died, and she was mourning for him. It seemed like Max Lee had radar installed on me. Every time I looked at him, he seemed to notice. When I got into the car, he stopped the driver from closing the door and looked in my direction. Since leaving me, you haven't been able to find a decent man. You've had 3 kids, and no one was there to pick you up after getting off the plane. Damn it. I'm so angry. But before he could react, my childhood friend and the godfather of my kids, Kelvin, arrived. Darling. I called out to him with an excited voice, "You're here late. I've missed you so much." While saying this, I gave my children a knowing look. They immediately understood and rushed forward, hugging Kelvin's legs and calling him Dad. From the corner of my eye, I saw the triumphant expression on Max's face crumble. "Emma, I knew you were having an affair with Kelvin. You divorced me because of him." I'm about to explode. Max Lee clearly has his eyes on his childhood sweetheart Sophia, but now he's turning the tables. I grit my teeth, turn to look at him, and say, "So what if I had an affair with Kelvin? To tell you the truth, when we got married, I served you at night, and during the day, as soon as you left, I would call Kelvin to be lovey-dovey at home. As a successful man, the most infuriating thing is being cuckolded." Sure enough, Max's forehead veins bulge. "So, you were only with me for my money? Or was it because you were cheating on me?" "Emma, you're asking for trouble." Max grits his teeth and prepares to get out of the car. I quickly hide behind Kelvin. Thankfully, as soon as Max gets out of the car, Sophia grabs him and says, "Max, Uncle and Auntie are still waiting for us to have dinner together." Her soft voice extinguishes Max's anger, and he gets back in the car. Watching the direction in which the car leaves, I stand there feeling somewhat dazed. What's going on? Why is Sophia still calling Max's parents Uncle and Auntie? Weren't they married as soon as I left the country? Forget it, whether they're married or not, what does it have to do with me? I shake my head, putting Max out of my mind. "Emma, let go of me, please." Kelvin releases my arm now that Max is gone. If my girlfriend saw this, she'd skin me alive. My fault, entirely my fault. I quickly put some distance between me and Kelvin, then moved our things into the trunk of Kelvin's car. The 3 little ones, who were always chattering in the car, fell silent. I looked at them, and they were staring at me wide-eyed, puzzled. "What's the matter? Why are you looking at me like that?" I asked, feeling a bit uneasy. Lucas finally spoke up, "Mom, was that man at the airport our dad?" At his words, my expression froze.
Oh no.
I was so caught up in arguing with Max that I forgot the 3 little ones were there. "Of course not," I firmly denied. Alex questioned, "But you just said you were married." Perhaps because they'd only ever had a mom, the 3 little ones had a clear understanding of parents. The children were Max's, and that was an unchangeable fact, but Max already had Sophia by his side. Sophia might seem gentle, but she was not to be trifled with. It wouldn't benefit the children to acknowledge Max Lee as their father. I didn't want anyone to harm my children. Having made up my mind, I said, "I did get married to him, but your dad is someone else." "Who is our dad then?" they asked. At just over 4 years old, this was the first time they had asked so clearly about their father. After a moment of contemplation, I replied, "When Mom was abandoned by that man, I lost faith in love and relationships. So, I bought a few sperm samples overseas, had artificial insemination, and gave birth to you. In other words, you don't have a dad." "Oh, I see," said the 3 little ones, not quite understanding. I breathed a sigh of relief. Phew, I managed to deceive them. Kelvin dropped me off at my destination and then left. I looked at the European-style villa in front of me, feeling a bit lost. My dad passed away early, and my mom and I struggled to make ends meet. Before I left for overseas, my mom took the $200,000 I gave her and set up a seafood stall at the market to continue her fish-selling business. I never imagined that money could disappear so quickly, especially with 3 kids who could spend it like there was no tomorrow. $800,000 vanished in no time. Just when I was starting to worry about how to make ends meet, my mom claimed that she had become rich and urged me to bring the kids back. I returned for the sake of the children. I didn't expect my mom to become rich, and I had no hopes in that regard. I just wanted her to help take care of the children while she continued to run her fish stall. But now, it seemed she had indeed become wealthy and lived in a villa. As I was pondering this, a familiar voice rang out, "Emma, I've missed you so much, Emma." I turned to see a woman dressed in an expensive dress, elegantly made up, approaching in small, delicate steps. There was no trace of my mom with a fish knife in her hand. "Mom?" I hesitated to speak. "Why? Doesn't your mom become too beautiful? Don't you recognize me?" My mom flirtatiously responded. I opened my arms wide to embrace her, and just as she was about to hug me, she suddenly noticed the 3 little ones standing beside me. She withdrew her hand and crouched down, hugging all 3 of them at once. "My sweethearts, Grandma finally gets to see you. Grandma has missed you so much," she shouted. My mom still had her booming voice, just like at the seafood market. Her loud exclamation drew a crowd of onlookers. "Mom, please keep it down," I reminded her, but she shot me a glare. "I'm showing affection to my lovely grandchildren. Who are you to tell me what to do?" "Mom, you've put on makeup," I said as we walked. "Of course, but this villa." Faced with my question, my mom, who usually had thicker skin than a city wall, surprisingly looked shy. "Silly girl, it's all because I found a wealthy dad for you." "What?" My mom finding me a dad was just as unexpected as me hiding the fact that I was married to Max and telling him I was pregnant. My mom waved to someone near the stairs, and a bespectacled, refined man approached. "Quick, call him Dad," my mom whispered, pulling the man's hand and giving me a meaningful look. I couldn't bring myself to say it. Fortunately, my stepdad was sensible. He smiled and gently told me to call him Uncle Lin. Uncle Lin nodded to me and, as soon as he saw my 3 kids, his eyes lit up with excitement. "Such cute little ones. Oh my adorable grandkids, quickly call me Grandpa." His refined appearance vanished instantly, replaced by an enthusiastic expression that was even more exaggerated than my mom's. He seemed eccentric in some way, making me think like attracts like. I found out about my older brother during dinner that night. "Emma, you don't have to call him Dad, but please call your step-brother. After all, the Lins will be your brother in the future. We'll depend on your brother for our livelihood." Upon learning about my mom's new family, I didn't plan on staying here for long. However, it wasn't the right time to discuss that, so I nodded, considering my mom's future. As soon as there was commotion at the door, my mom grabbed me and brought me to the entrance. Before I could even greet my brother, the person who had arrived looked at me in shock, almost jumping in place. "Sister-in-law, what are you doing here?" I couldn't believe it. My younger brother turned out to be Max's best friend. Back when I was with Max, he used to come to our house for meals all the time. No way, you're my stepsister." Jonathan's mouth formed an O shape in disbelief. My mom and Uncle Lin were equally shocked, looking at me and Jonathan in amazement. Everyone is an adult now. Ordinary lies definitely won't fool anyone. So I decided to speak up. My ex and Jonathan were best friends, that's why he used to call me sister-in-law. But that was in the past. Now, my ex has already died. My words had just fallen when a gnashing of teeth was suddenly heard. "Emma, who are you cursing to die?" Startled, I looked in the direction of the voice and only then realized that Max was there too. He had been standing just outside the light at the door earlier, which was why I hadn't noticed him. Talking bad about someone and getting caught, what a twist. But if the target was Max, it felt satisfying. Whoever fits the description, that's who I'm cursing, and I raised my chin and glared at Max. With Max's appearance, Uncle Lin and my mom took a deep breath once again. "So, Emma's ex is Max," I nodded. The child seemed to have realized something and my mom was on the verge of fainting. I quickly turned to comfort her and gestured for her not to say anything. I also gave a meaningful look to the 3 little ones, and the eldest understood my intention. He led his younger siblings upstairs. As I watched those 3 rapidly retreating figures, Max's face grew even darker. Was I really that unwelcome? Well, I certainly didn't like Max and didn't want the children to have too much contact with him. However, the Lin family had a good relationship with the Lee family, so I didn't want to offend anyone here. I refrained from confronting Max Lee further. The atmosphere at the dinner table was awkward. I hurriedly finished my meal and found an excuse to go upstairs. When I reached the corner of the staircase, I clearly heard Max's voice. "Bring some wine. I'm not in a good mood today. Let's drown our sorrows." Upon hearing this, my footsteps momentarily slowed, but I quickly resumed my pace. The villa's housekeeper came to feed the 3 little ones, and after they were well fed, I bathed them one by one. By the time I was done, 3 hours had passed. I rubbed my sore back and took a shower. As I walked out of the bathroom, I found myself trapped in a dominant embrace. It was Max. In his intoxicated state, he hugged me tightly, burying his head in my shoulder and repeatedly whispering, "I love you so much, I really love you." His deep voice was filled with emotion, just like it had been several years ago. Uncontrollable memories from the depths of my mind rushed back. When I first met Max, he was in a drunken state. I had just recently joined Fuji Group at that time, and it was during a company dinner. Drunk Max suddenly rushed in, hugged me, and said, "I love you so much." From that moment on, I became the envy of everyone. After marrying Max, he asked me to quit my job and stay at home. I agreed, on the condition that he would stop drinking. He promised. I thought I could influence him, but then Sophia called one night. He had another big drinking session, locked himself in a room, and wouldn't let me in. I received a text message from Sophia that night, "Do you really think Max loves you?" How ridiculous. That was the first time I learned of Sophia's existence, and it was in that moment that my heart, filled with love for Max, was trampled upon. I took a deep breath, suppressed the pain in my heart, and took out my phone. I retrieved Sophia's number from my blocked list and dialed it. The call was quickly answered, and Sophia yawned, her voice throaty as she said, "Emma, is there something urgent for you to call this late? Max and I are already asleep." "Oh, is that so?" I coldly chuckled. "But your Max is currently hugging me, calling me my dear every second. I'll give you half an hour to get him out of here, or I'll take him to bed." With that, I hung up the phone without bothering to mention Max's location. Sophia would find a way, naturally. Jonathan walked out at that moment, blinked when he saw Max hugging me, and was about to pretend he hadn't seen anything and go back in. "Come over and pull Max away," I asked Jonathan with a stern face, and I couldn't budge him. "Okay, sister-in-law," Jonathan said. Max's strength was surprising, and the more Jonathan pulled, the tighter Max held on to me. I was nearly suffocating and had to stop. "Let's wait for Sophia to come," I suggested. Sophia arrived quickly, and as soon as she came in, she went to pull Max. "Honey, Max, let's go home," she said. But Max, seemingly too drunk to hear her, didn't respond. He continued to hold me tightly, and Sophia looked at me with accusatory eyes since she couldn't get Max to leave. "Emma, you've already divorced. Can you stop seducing Max?" Sophia said. "This hypocritical white lotus is more disgusting than Max." I couldn't tolerate it anymore and looked at Jonathan, "Go get a bucket of water." Jonathan went to fetch a bucket of water from the bathroom. Puzzled, he handed it to me. I took the bucket, walked over to Max Lee, and poured the water over his head. The once elegant CEO was instantly turned into a wet mess. His drunk eyes focused. "Even a dog would know to go home, and you should leave since you are clearly drunk." "Emma, you said I'm a dog," he growled, his eyes filled with icy fury. I wasn't afraid, but thinking of everything that had happened before, the hatred welled up inside me. I spoke again, "Even a dog knows its master, Max." "Emma Harris." Max roared. He squeezed my throat tightly, and I couldn't breathe or make a sound. His grip was so strong, and I couldn't break free. Jonathan wanted to intervene but was afraid of hurting me, so he could only watch anxiously. As I began to feel dizzy and close to passing out, Max said, "Do you really think I won't do anything to you?" I struggled to remove his hand, but my efforts were in vain in the face of his power. Just when I was about to lose consciousness, I heard a sharp cracking sound. Max's forehead throbbed with pain, and he instinctively let go of me. I collapsed on the floor, gasping for fresh air. It was only then that I saw my eldest baby, Lucas, who had run out in a sleeping bag, shoot Max with his toy gun. "You're not allowed to hurt my mom." The childish voice caught Max's attention. He walked towards Lucas with a dark expression. With his tender age, Lucas was scared. He yelled, "Don't come near," and continued shooting at Max with his toy gun. The previous shot had been accurate, but now the toy gun's power couldn't harm Max at all. Seeing the fear on Lucas' face, I felt a surge of heartache. I hadn't fully recovered yet, but I crawled to Max and grabbed his leg, giving him a fierce, roaring look. "Max Lee, if you dare to hurt my child, I'll fight you with everything I've got," I declared. I looked into Max's eyes, filled with hatred. At that moment, I despised him more than ever. Our gazes locked, and I didn't back down, fully prepared to fight Max at any moment. He stared at me intensely for a long while. Just when I thought he was about to attack me, he turned silently and went downstairs. "Lucas!" I rushed towards him and held him tightly. My heart was finally at ease. I then noticed that since Lucas had appeared, Sophia had been staring at his face. In fact, my 3 children looked a lot like Max. He might not be able to see it, but others certainly could, like Sophia and Jonathan, who were looking shocked. I blocked Lucas' face with mine and glared at Sophia. "Max Lee has left. You should leave too." In the face of my rudeness, Sophia was furious. After struggling for a moment, she still went to chase after Max Lee. "Max, you're drunk," Sophia tried to support him. Sophia, with a delicate tone, prepared to help Max Lee. Max pushed her away abruptly, saying, "Don't touch me." Sophia was thrown to the ground and began crying in pain, but Max didn't even turn around. It seemed like he felt embarrassed that I had witnessed the scene. Sophia turned back and glared at me with a fierce expression before going after Max again. Watching this, I could only feel speechless. A scoundrel is just a scoundrel. The woman, the one who had been on his mind for so long, had returned, but she didn't seem to make any difference to him. I picked up my child and prepared to go back to our room. However, Jonathan spoke at this moment. "Sister-in-law, these past 5 years, Max hasn't been doing well." I interrupted Jonathan and quickly walked back to our room. I cradled my child and gently patted him to sleep. Fortunately, he was always courageous and didn't seem to be bothered by what had just happened. Before long, my habit took over, and I found myself browsing Sophia's social media. In the photos, she had changed into casual clothes, and the inebriated Max was sleeping peacefully by her side. I had seen countless photos like this in the past 5 years. Sophia never tired of flaunting her love life on social media. Previously, when I saw such photos, my heart had become numb, but at this moment, it hurt unexpectedly. Maybe it was because I was holding my child in my arms, or maybe it was because not long ago, Max Lee had held me. Jonathan had mentioned that Max had not been doing well in recent years, but could I really say that I've been doing well? I almost died giving birth to 3 babies. At the time of my near-death experience, Max was having a candlelit dinner with Sophia. When our youngest was born and had to stay in an incubator, Max was celebrating his wedding anniversary with Sophia. When our 3 children asked me about their father, I didn't know how to explain. However, on social media, Sophia claimed that Max had already decided on the names for their future children. There were too many things I couldn't forgive Max Lee for. I had a restless night, and the next day, I woke up with dark circles under my eyes. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Uncle Lin, my mom, and Jonathan, who looked eager to speak with me. I instructed the maids to take the 3 kids to play in the yard, and then we moved to the living room. "Are these children Max's?" My mom's words were in the form of a question, but her tone was filled with certainty. I knew that denying it wouldn't change anything, so I nodded. "Yes, but I won't let the children recognize Max Lee as their father. He already has Sophia, and I don't want my children to get hurt. If you consider me part of the family, I implore you to keep this a secret." I directed my gaze, especially towards Jonathan, as he was Max's close friend. Under my intense scrutiny, Jonathan nodded and said, "All right, I promise I won't say anything." After having breakfast, Uncle Lin and Jonathan left. My mother, who threw away her pretense of elegance in 1 second, was ecstatic and dancing around the room. "The children are Max's."
Ha! Ha!
She laughed heartily. I remained silent, and she noticed my lack of enthusiasm. "Why aren't you happy, Mom?" "How can I not be happy? You don't know how much Sophia's mother flaunts in front of me. She's been boasting about her daughter marrying the CEO of Fuji Group, but after all these years, I don't think Max has any intention of marrying her. My heart was in turmoil as I contemplated this. If Max and Sophia haven't married, what about those marriage certificates Sophia flaunts on social media? Could it be? There was something trying to break through the barrier of my mind, but I managed to suppress it in time. Whether or not she had married Max, what did it have to do with me? Upon learning that my children were Max's, my mom gained confidence. She went ahead and organized a welcome party for me, ignoring my objections. She particularly invited Sophia and her mother. The Lin family had a notable status in high society, so the party had a considerable turnout. I couldn't resist my mom and attended the event, but I didn't let my 3 children participate. After walking around with my mom for a while, I found a spot to sit down and bide my time. Max and Sophia approached me at that moment. Max, taking a condescending tone, said, "Your man is about to be stolen by another woman, and you're still here drinking." I followed Max's gaze and saw Kelvin with his girlfriend in the corner of the party, all lovey-dovey. I suddenly remembered that in Max's eyes, Kelvin was the father of my children. If I had known, I should have asked Kelvin to stay away from the party. However, it was too late now. I casually flicked my hair and responded, "Men, being unfaithful is normal." "Max, weren't you once two-timing as well, having your cake and eating it too?" Max's expression darkened instantly, and he gritted his teeth. "You love him to this extent, that you can even accept his infidelity?" Max laughed. "What love? He just gives me money. Same as when you got together with me. It was all for my money?" Max's gaze was heavy as he stared at me, and it made me realize that I had wasted my true feelings on him. Without hesitation, I replied, "That's right." My response seemed to disappoint Max, and he abruptly reached out, grabbing my hand and placing it on my slender waist. "In that case, I'll give you money." We were now very close, and I could clearly feel his breath and heartbeat, just like in the days when we shared the same bed. I didn't know what Max meant by his actions. He had decisively divorced me before, and now. "Max." Sophia's voice quivered as she spoke. I snapped back to reality, pushing Max away. Could it be that Max wanted to become a stepfather to my 3 children? Hearing her words, Max seemed to freeze for a moment. He let go of me, took a step back, and left the scene. Sophia, however, remained in place. When my impatient gaze swept over her, she raised her chin uncomfortably. "I had an argument with Max just now. Please don't take it seriously." I rolled my eyes and retorted, "If you don't leave now, I'll call Max Lee back." Sophia, now anxious, asked, "Emma, are those 3 kids Max's?" "Yes," I replied, giving her the confirmed answer. Sophia's innocent face displayed a hint of distress. "Emma Harris, you have no shame. You actually had his children behind Max's back. You shameless person. I'm nowhere near your level. You abandoned Max Lee and went abroad for your career in the first place. And when your career didn't take off, you not only met with Max Lee multiple times during our marriage but also tried to convince him to divorce me. If anyone is shameless, it's you, Sophia." Sophia, with her trembling fingers around that red wine glass. "You should leave if you don't have any other business. You're annoying." I couldn't even be bothered to give a single glance to this kind of green tea bitch. However, Sophia stayed put and said, "I'll give you $200,000, take your children and leave." Upon hearing that, I raised an eyebrow. $200,000? Are you trying to get rid of a beggar? When Max and I divorced, he gave me $1 million in a settlement. How much do you want, then? $10 million. What? Sophia exclaimed, drawing the attention of a few people. She quickly lowered her voice and said, "Emma, you've gone crazy with greed. Where would I get $10 million? I nonchalantly swirled the red wine in my hand and said, "Well, that's your problem. At most, $200,000, Emma. I advise you to be sensible. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite." I'm getting interested. How do you plan to be impolite? At this moment, Sophia's innocent face was covered in shadows. Back then, I could make you sneak out of the country, and I can still do it now. As Sophia spoke, she reached out to grab the red wine glass from my hand. I instinctively resisted, But before I could touch Sophia, she fell straight backward into the pool, creating a big splash. "Save me, help!" Sophia's scream echoed, and the next second, an agile figure jumped into the pool. Max Lee pulled Sophia out of the water. After coming out of the pool, Sophia asked, "Emma, why did you push me?" Sophia, sobbing and leaning on Max, accused me, "She pushed me." Instantly, I became the center of attention. The people attending the banquet looked at me with a hint of suspicion in their eyes. I couldn't help but laugh. "So, this is Sophia's level, huh?" "Max, you have to stand up for me," Sophia cried with her tearful eyes. Max Lee's expression darkened as he looked at me and asked, "Why did you push Sophia?" It seemed that as long as Sophia shed tears, everyone assumed I had pushed her. I raised my lips and walked over to Max Lee and Sophia, saying, "Well, I didn't like her, that's why." With that, I gave Sophia a kick, and she splashed into the water again. Even Max Lee couldn't stop her, so he jumped into the pool once more. Watching the two lovebirds in the water, I felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. I planned to sit in the gazebo and enjoy the show of these lovebirds playing in the water. But when I turned around, I slipped and fell into the water myself. Well, now we had 3 lovebirds in the water. At the moment I fell into the water, Max, who had already grabbed Sophia, let her go and swam quickly towards me. "Are you okay?" he asked, holding me with concern on his face. I can swim," I replied. "Thanks." Seeing the ice-cold look in Max's eyes, I smirked and went to change my clothes. When I turned around, I noticed that Max had followed me, completely ignoring Sophia splashing around in the water. I quickened my pace. However, before I could make my way out of the backyard, Max pressed me against the wall and planted a passionate, dominating kiss on me. I frantically pushed at Max, but I couldn't push him away. It wasn't until I was nearly breathless that he finally released me. Smack! I slapped Max across the face. "Show some restraint, Mr. Lee," I told him. He, who was probably experiencing his first ever slap, clenched his teeth with a malevolent aura surrounding him. Just when I thought he was about to get physical again, he suddenly bent down, picked me up, and walked away with long strides, ignoring my struggles. He placed me in his car and handed me a card. $200,000 for one night with you, he said. As I watched the security guards outside the car and realized there was no way to escape, I quieted down. I hadn't expected Max Lee to bring me to our wedding house from 5 years ago. I followed Max inside and was stunned when I saw the scene within. The layout, the flowers on the table, the shawl casually placed on the sofa, even my slippers at the door, everything was exactly the same as it had been when I left 5 years ago. "After you left, I preserved everything here. I occasionally come to stay, reminiscing about the times we had," Max said. I could guess what he was going to say next, and panic surged within me. I interrupted him, "Mr. Lee, if Sophia finds out you're keeping all of this, do you think she might get upset and leave the country again?" Max's voice turned icy, and his words sent a shiver down my spine. "Whether she leaves the country or not is none of my concern." His nonchalant remark struck me as amusing. Mr. Lee really didn't know how to lie. I took out my phone, opened Sophia's social media profile, and showed it to him. Max Lee took the phone, and as he looked at the content of the social media posts, his face turned grim. As he scrolled down, his handsome face gradually filled with anger. "All of this is fake," he said. "You know Sophia is my parents' goddaughter. Every time we've been seen together, my parents were present. The most recent post was taken when I got drunk at Jonathan's house. She took it while I was intoxicated." His explanation was the first time I had heard it, and if it had been 5 years ago, I would have forgiven him without hesitation and continued our relationship. But back then, all he had given me was indifference. "So," I asked with a calm voice, "even if Sophia's social media posts are fake, why did you bring me here to tell me all of this? What's your intention?" I stared into Max's face. After a brief silence, he pressed his lips and continued, "Emma, if you hand over the 3 children to their father, Kelvin, I can forgive the past and accept you again." Despite him initiating the reconciliation, he still spoke in a condescending tone.
Ha!
"It's truly laughable. I'm sorry, but I don't need that." With these words, I turned to leave. However, Max suddenly grabbed me and pushed me down on the sofa. His eyes were bloodshot, and he spoke in an agitated tone. I've already made such a concession. What more do you want? I don't want anything. Late affection is cheaper than a dog. I don't need you now, I replied coldly. Max seemed like he wanted to say something more, but suddenly, there was a loud knocking at the door from outside. Hello, we are the police. Please open the door, a voice said. Upon hearing this, Max clenched his teeth in frustration. It's you, isn't it? I called the police the moment we stepped in here. With the presence of the police, Max couldn't keep me against my will any longer. When I returned to the Lin family villa, the dinner was already over, and the 3 children were sleeping peacefully under my mother's care. I had my mother go to her room to rest, and I lay down beside the 3 little ones. The next morning, when I woke up, the house was very quiet, and I didn't see the 3 kids. After inquiring with the housekeeper, I found out that Uncle Lin and my mom had taken the 3 kids to the amusement park. Even though I had hired a nanny to take care of the children while I was abroad, the youngest one had frequent bouts of illness, and I couldn't manage everything on my own. So, the children didn't get to visit the amusement park very often during my time overseas. Thinking about being back in the country where they could enjoy such experiences whenever they liked brought a smile to my face. I had completed my studies abroad and was planning to establish my own studio upon returning. I was busy with preparations when my phone rang with a notification. It was my mother calling. As soon as I answered the call, I heard my mother sobbing. Little one is missing. What? My heart leaped into my throat. We were at the amusement park, playing and having a good time, and then suddenly he was gone. I didn't really register the rest of what my mother was saying. I hurried to the amusement park. 4 hours had already passed since Alan went missing, and the police had arrived at the park. They were searching the area while also reviewing security footage. Finally, there was a breakthrough when the amusement park closed in the evening. Surveillance footage revealed a woman with a suitcase that was just the right size to fit a child. Interestingly, she hadn't been seen with the suitcase before entering the park. The authorities immediately launched a search for this woman. Uncle Lin also used his connections to ensure that he would be informed as soon as any leads emerged. However, it was already late at night, and 10 hours had passed since Alan went missing. Alan had always been relatively weak, and being confined in an airtight suitcase was a terrifying prospect. Beside me, Lucas and Alex were filled with self-blame. Mom, we're sorry. We didn't protect our little brother. It's not your fault, I reassured them, patting their heads. I wanted them to feel at ease, but in reality, I was filled with immense anxiety. Every minute we didn't find Alan was another minute of danger for him. At this point, I thought of Max Lee. Max's power and influence were immense. Even when Sophia went abroad initially, he had known her every move. I figured that Max's assistance in finding little treasure would increase our chances of success. So, I contacted Max immediately. Mr. Lee, my youngest one, Alan, is missing, and I'd like to ask for your help in finding him. I'm willing to do anything if you can help me locate him. Half an hour later, Max Lee's car pulled up in front of the house. Upon receiving Max's text, I quickly went downstairs and got into his car. Where is Alan? I asked. He's in an abandoned warehouse in a remote area. We're ready to go now, Max replied. All right, I tried to stay calm. Max spoke up again, surprising me with his request. I can help you rescue Alan, but you'll have to be with me. I hadn't expected Max to make this demand, but the most important thing at the moment was to ensure the safety of my child. Max's convoy quickly arrived at the abandoned warehouse. This kidnapping appeared to be premeditated. There were guards outside the warehouse, and a horn sounded as we arrived. If you come any closer, I'll cut off this child's head, a voice threatened. I felt my legs go weak upon hearing this. Max Lee sent someone forward to negotiate, but the other party didn't specify their demands. I was getting anxious, but Max held my hand to calm me. The person inside will definitely go to jail. Negotiations are aimed at ensuring Alan's safety. If negotiations fail, Alan's life will be at risk. I couldn't bear to lose Alan, and I prepared to get out of the car. Max stopped me, asking where I was going. You'll negotiate in the front, and I'll sneak in through a side window to rescue Alan, I said. Max immediately rejected the idea, warning me that it was too dangerous to enter the warehouse alone, especially without knowing how many people were inside. My desperation took over, and I was about to leave the car to save my child. "Where are you going?" Max intercepted me. "Please let me go. I need to save my little one," I cried. Max remained unyielding. In my emotional breakdown, I couldn't focus on anything else. I accused him of being heartless and questioned how he could let his own child be in danger. "What are you saying?" Max retorted. "Alan is my child?" "Yes, so are Lucas and Alex. Even if it's not for me, can you bear to see your own child in danger?" My words left Max momentarily stunned. After regaining his composure, he murmured, no wonder. The first time I saw the 3 children, I found them oddly familiar. Even when they playfully tripped me with a jumping rope, I hadn't thought of confronting them. His realization was accompanied by a look in my direction. "Stay in the car and wait. I'll rescue my child," Max said. 10 minutes later, as negotiations in the front failed and the captors became violent, Max burst out of the warehouse, cradling Alan in his arms. Alan's hair was disheveled, and his face was pale, but he was unharmed. I cried and hugged Alan tightly, apologizing to him. "I'm so sorry. Mommy couldn't protect you." On the side, Max gave a wry smile before suddenly collapsing to the ground. I finally noticed the blood on the back of his head. 3 days later, at the hospital, Alan had recovered from the shock, but Max remained in a coma. He had suffered a severe head injury and had been stabbed twice. Alan narrated the story to his siblings with admiration. "Uncle Doggy saved me. He came out of nowhere and fought with the bad guys, just like a superhero." I entered the room with a smile and said, "Don't call him Uncle Doggy anymore. He's your dad, the father who risked his life to save his child." Alan enthusiastically acknowledged him as Dad. "But, Mom, you said we were." "I'm sorry, I lied to you," I interrupted. "After I had an argument with your dad, I went abroad and discovered that I was pregnant with all of you." I wasn't sure how much the 3-4-year-old kids could comprehend from my words, but they were clearly excited to have a formidable dad. They gathered around Max's hospital bed, chattering endlessly. As if they had a telepathic connection, Max opened his eyes, and the moment he did, he saw the 3 children all calling him Dad in unison. Tears welled up in Max's eyes, and his usual mature and composed demeanor faltered. He choked back his emotions and embraced the 3 kids tightly. On the second day of his awakening, Max inquired about the reason behind the kidnapping. After learning that it was orchestrated by Sophia, who had paid someone to do it, he immediately began making plans to contact a lawyer. "Max, our child was nearly killed. Sophia deserves a 10-year sentence. You're not trying to protect her, are you?" I asked, looking at him with suspicion. Max cleared his throat and replied, "No, she hurt my child. 10 years is not enough." I was taken aback by Max's response. I hadn't expected him to react this way. I even felt that he was being quite ruthless. He continued, "6 years ago, she left me and went abroad for her career. I had you, but at first, I regarded you as a replacement, so I couldn't realize my true feelings for you until you left the country. I realized that I loved you, not Sophia. My feelings for her were just an obsession. I immediately clarified this with Sophia, and during these 5 years, I have provided her family with many good business opportunities. I believe I don't owe her anything. However, I didn't expect that she would put on a daily drama in her social media feed, continuously hurting you. And now, she has harmed my child." After listening to Max, I understood the depth of his hatred for Sophia. I nodded in agreement. I prepared to leave the hospital since Max had awakened. There was no need for me to stay and continue caring for him. As I turned to go, Max's voice rang out once more, "Emma, I was wrong. Can you forgive me? Can we live together happily as a family of 5 in the future?" The image of a family of 5 was something I had only imagined during my first year abroad, before the children were born. Back then, filled with maternal love, I wished to give them a complete home. But with Sophia's daily social media posts, that dream was long shattered. The past was in the past, and I had to look forward. I firmly expressed that I would not forgive Max. He persisted, "Emma, I'll wait for your forgiveness forever, no matter how long it takes." Waiting or not was his choice, but I would not turn back. 2 weeks later, Max Lee was discharged from the hospital. He shamelessly moved into the Lin family's house. He seemed like a changed person, no longer the domineering and irritable man he once was. He was extremely indulgent towards the children, treating them with utmost care. He played horsey with them, read and drew with them, and didn't mind when they used colorful markers to paint on his face. I could clearly sense that with a father's presence, the 3 children had become much happier and more cheerful. I didn't rush him to leave, and days went by like this. Max Lee didn't bring up the topic of remarriage again. He occasionally emphasized his willingness to wait for me. At the moment, I had no intention of forgiving Max. As for the future, who could predict it? Perhaps with a successful career, I'd find a cute young guy to pamper, or maybe I'd feel the allure of Max Lee, the mature man, and decide to be with him once more. Who could say for sure what the future held?